Hello and welcome back to another episode of Mind, Money, Soul. And we're going to jump straight into it today. And I want to know, do any of these sound like you? If you say, I am so shit with money, what's the point in trying? Or you start off the month well with a plan and a budget, but you make a small little fuck up with your budget, or you overspend in one category and the whole plan just goes out the window. Or you're an all or nothing person with your money, so you go very extreme and you find yourself yo-yoing between saving loads, then clearing out your savings and spending it, and then saving loads and then dipping back in. Maybe you say things like, I'm a spender, I can't help it, I try, but I'm just not good at budgeting. Or maybe you're a perfectionist and you feel like there is a perfect money management process where nothing goes wrong and you feel like you just haven't cracked it yet. So you keep starting new with every month and you make no real progress. If any of these sound like you, or you relate to any of them, this episode is for you. So let's get into it. Now, I want to talk about why those things are not helping you make any financial progress and how you can actually change. So there are two things here. One, how you identify is how you will act. And two, the compounding effect. So first off, how you identify is how you act. The more that you associate yourself with the above behaviours, and the more that you see yourself as that type of person, the more you are going to identify with it and the more that you will exhibit those behaviours. So if you literally see yourself as a spender, what do you think is going to happen? You are going to just carry on spending with the way that you talk about yourself. This is why I'm not a big I'm not a big fan of phrases like that, right? They're habitual. You saying like, I'm such a spender is something that you have told yourself over years to protect yourself, to self-sabotage, and it's all subconscious, right? Just because you've spent money, or maybe you've got in debt, or maybe you've, spent more than you would like, and you say, I'm a spender, if you associate negatively with that phrase, that's where the issue is. So if you're like, I'm a spender, and it's a bad thing, you're going to carry on behaving in alignment with those spending habits, and it's going to keep you stuck, and then you're going to carry on saying it, and it's going to keep you acting like that, and then the process repeats itself. Now, what we do know is that our brains are so very powerful. They will essentially act with how you see yourself. They will act in alignment with what you tell yourself. Now, this is both amazing and frustrating. Frustrating if you constantly keep saying negative, bad things or self-sabotaging things about yourself, but amazing if you're saying like good things about yourself, right? And you're like, I'm a saver, I'm someone who's good with their money, I'm good at this, I'm amazing at this, or whatever it is, right? How you identify, your brain is going to go and not only look for examples of those things to reinforce what you're saying, but also it will create an emotion in your body which will drive your behaviour. So it's a double whammy. It's a double whammy of both your behaviour actually being what you're saying, but then also your brain only looking at those examples. So if you say, I'm a spender, your brain, you're going to feel a certain thing, you're going to then spend your money, right? Now, even if there's been a time in that month where you've saved a bit, your brain will still only look at where you've spent. You see the issue? So this is why the way that you identify with yourself is really important to understand and see the things that you are saying about yourself. Okay, it's going to have a big impact on how you then act. Now, for as long as you say those things about yourself, now this obviously I gave the example of, I'm a spender, but for example, let's apply this to being a perfectionist, okay? If you're like, I'm a perfectionist, I need everything to be perfect, you might not actually feel that on a visceral level, but you've always said it, right? Now, if you do truly do believe that, and you see yourself as a perfectionist, you are setting yourself up for a loss because there is no such thing as perfect. And listen to me, yeah? I have had an issue with perfectionism my whole life. Seriously. It stemmed from when I was younger and I was a gifted and talented child, and I felt like if I did things quote unquote perfectly, then I would be loved, I'd be respected, I'd be seen, I'd be heard. And people have said to me for years, there's no such thing as perfection. And I'm like, Have you seen my life? I've done many things perfectly. First of all, I haven't. It's just the way that I viewed it. Secondly, it stopped me from doing so many things because I'm like, it's not perfect, it's not perfect. But in other eyes, people are like, that's great, that's good enough to go out. Perfect doesn't exist. I told myself that as a coping mechanism and a protection mechanism, so I showed up in a good way, and I thought that I could control the way that other people viewed me, the way that things went in my life, the love that I received by being perfect. Now, not only was I not perfect, but what happened was when I did something that didn't align with my own perfectionism, cue an absolute fucking meltdown. And when people used to say to me, perfectionism doesn't exist, being perfect doesn't exist, I honestly would really struggle with that. It is only within the last probably year or two that I've really on a visceral level started to be like, oh wow, perfect really doesn't exist. And actually, you don't want to be perfect. Perfectionism is actually the bad thing. Good enough is great because it allows you to get more done. And I don't mean in a productive, capitalistic, I attach the things I do to my sense of self-worth way. I mean in a way of get that shit done. Don't need to think about it too much. Let's crack on and do the next thing. You get to experience life more fully. You get to do more, be more, have more in life by not being a perfectionist. The irony. So that's another way with how identifying with something can keep you stuck. Another example might be, let me go back to, so that I'm so shit with money, what's the point in trying? If you're constantly telling yourself you're shit with money and there's no point in trying, it's going to keep you doing that same thing. Now, I could keep applying this to many, many examples, but I just wanted to highlight that. Now, the second thing, the way that it's keeping you stuck, is the compounding effect. So if you do something, bad or something that you don't like 1 month, and you made a mistake with your budget, with the way that you spend your money, that's okay, right? It's okay. It doesn't matter. Like we said, perfect doesn't exist. But if you keep making the same mistakes month on month on month, the negative consequences of those mistakes will compound. So it's not about not making mistakes. It's about if you keep making the same mistakes over and over again, if you keep overspending on the same things, right? It adds up. Overspending £100 a month, every month, over the course of a year is really going to add up, right? That is going to compound into £1,200 over the course of just 1 year. £1,200. This shit adds up. Now, if you was on debt, and we've got to look at interest as well, that's going to compound even more. Now, not only is it financially things compound, but habits compound. So if you repeat the same habits over and over and over and over again, they get more deep-rooted and they get harder to change. Again, there is both a pro and a con to this. The con is that if you are repeating the same negative habits over and over and over again, they get more deep-rooted, they get harder to change. The rewiring in your brain, there's a bigger process to go through. However, if you have positive habits and you keep doing them over and over and over again, they get so ingrained that they are just like natural to you. They are second nature. And this is great when they are positive, helpful, supportive, useful habits, okay? No matter whether it's negative or positive, the neural pathways get stronger over time. Your brain doesn't give a fuck if something is making it easier or harder for you, right? It doesn't care if it's negative or positive, because that's the part where you're assessing objectively or subjectively, like, is it good or bad? Your brain is just going to strengthen those neural pathways as you repeat something over and over and over again. So when we apply this to budgeting, if you are constantly telling yourself you're not good at it, or if you keep making the same mistakes with your budget around overspending or whatever it is, that is going to compound over time and make it harder in the future to shift. So if you can look at your habits now, look at your behaviours now, and look at what compounds over a long period of time, that's going to be really powerful, right? Because what can happen is, if you've already been shit with your budget, or you've already been shit with money, and you're going, oh, I'm shit anyway, what's the point in trying? It's not like it just stops there. Every month that it happens, it's going to get harder or worse. So wherever you are at right now, you want to stop, acknowledge the positive compounding effect of if you start now, what that looks like in a year, what that looks like in 3 years, 10 years. You see, it's like the extremes of the two. The longer you go not paying attention to it, the worse it's going to get. But the quicker you can nip it in the bud and start to implement positive financial habits with your budgeting, but also with your language, think about where that's going to get you in however many years' time. So the compounding effect is real. So I want to just talk about a couple of ways that we can shift this energy and this attitude. Number one is try not to be too extreme with your change, start small and build it up. Now, if you go too hard with your budgeting and you are too restrictive, you're not going to be able to confidently make these changes because you're going to yo-yo the other way, right? Think about it a little bit like with food and wellness. I give this example all the time. If you're like, right, I'm ready to make a change, I'm ready to be healthy, and let's just say that like you don't really exercise, you don't really eat that healthy, and you're ready to like go in. Let's just say you completely change your diet. You go to like, it's 3 meals a day, no snacks, low carbs, like you're doing keto, you want to do 10,000 steps a day, you also want to go to the gym, and you also want to stretch. Like, that's a big shift. Now, you might be driven, you might be motivated by the pain of feeling like sluggish and shit for the first week or for the first, couple of days. At some point, it's going to be too much and it's going to be overwhelming, and you're not going to stick to it. The chances, should I say, actually, you're not going to. The chances are lower that you're going to stick to it. Set yourself up for success by going, okay, the first thing I'm going to tackle is my movement. Okay, right now I don't exercise, so I'm going to set myself the goal of trying to exercise 3 times a day, 3 times a week, and I want to do 5,000 steps a day. And for this first week, that's what I'm going to commit to. Okay, so that's just what you've got to show up in. You don't have to think about your food, you don't have to think about anything else. That is what you focus on. Then you make that a little bbit of a habit, and then you can go, okay, the next thing I'm going to look at is just introduce some more vegetables. Okay, I don't have to cut anything out. I don't have to stop snacking. I'm just going to reintroduce more veg. And you can do it in stages so that after a couple of months, you've introduced these new habits, you've habit stacked, you're feeling better. In turn, by feeling better from the little habits that you've introduced, it makes you then want to carry on sticking to it and also doing more healthy habits as opposed to trying to do everything at once. This is the same with your budget. Right now, if you keep overspending and you have debt to pay off or you really want to do X, Y, and Z, just start by going, okay, I'm going to make a commitment to stick to only spending X amount in this specific category. Or I'm going to make a habit of just putting away £50 a month. Or I'm going to make a habit of not overspending in this one specific category. Whatever it is, whatever it looks like for you, do it small and build it up over time. That is key. Okay. Number 2, please trust the process. Please, please, please. It's okay if it's going to take you a little while to get out of a little pickle, okay? There is no set age you are meant to have all your wealth by. If you're in your 20s, if you're in your 30s, if you're in your 40s, you still have time. You still have so much time. You are on your own journey. Nothing has to be done by a certain point. It's so easy to go online and look around and see the 18-year-olds that are earning millions of pounds and you're like, oh my God, they've set themselves up for financial success for, forever. That's okay, but you're not in their position with their knowledge, with their experience, with their experiences, should I say, and their situation. You are you with your life, your experiences, your situation. What can you do for your life? You can't be anybody else. You literally cannot change who you are in regards to it's not Freaky Friday, right? You can't just put yourself in someone else's shoes. So compare yourself only to yourself. What is one way that I can be better today? What is one way that I can have, be 1% better today? And focus on yourself. Put the blinkers on, get focused and do it for yourself, but trust the process. Okay, number 3 is about building trust with yourself. So not just with the process, but with yourself. You gotta back yourself in this life because nobody else is gonna do it, right? If you don't back yourself, how will anybody else? And if you have the choice between backing yourself or not backing yourself, why would you not choose the positive one, right? There is this, it ties into this whole thing of being delusional. When you back yourself, not only do you make a better life for yourself, but you bring other people up as you go. Not that this is about other people, but we all have imaginations. We can all imagine things. We also all have thoughts that come to us. We're not our thoughts, but our thoughts happen to us. And there is a way in which we can choose our thoughts. I could right now sit and choose to think about something. I could sit and choose to be like, wow, I'm going to be so successful. I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this. You have the choice to do that. You got to learn to back yourself. When you are deciding to do something, if the first things that pops into your mind is I can't do this, I'll never be able to do this, it's never going to work, I've never been able to do it, who is that helping? Who is that benefiting? Now, it's okay if you have those thoughts, absolutely, but you don't have to believe them. When those thoughts come in that say, oh my God, you're never going to be able to do this, have another thought that says, let me prove you wrong. And you can say to those thoughts, thank you for keeping me safe and protecting me up until now. I don't need you anymore. Thank you. I'm going to choose these new thoughts. Okay, number 4, and I've mentioned this already, is nothing is perfect. When you try to become too efficient or too perfect with something, it leaves no room for error and it opens you up to other issues. Now, I'm reading this book by Morgan Housal called Same as Ever, and he talks about this concept of like efficiency. And let me give you this idea, right? Lions, right now, top of the food chain, in the animal kingdom, they are an efficient size. If they got any bigger, whilst they'd be better at catching prey, right, and eating and like killing things, they would then, their weakness was they would be slightly slower because they're heavier. They would be bigger and therefore easier for poachers to kill, right? So there is the most ideal size of something. When you try and get perfect and efficient in one area, it opens you up to weaknesses in other areas, okay? And it doesn't allow room for error. It's the same with trees, okay? Trees could get taller and bigger so that they could catch more sunlight and they could catch more rain. However, they are then more susceptible to wind damage. They are more susceptible to falling down in a storm, right? So there is like an ideal way in which things can run, but if you are too efficient and too perfect in certain areas, it can be an issue. Now, when you apply this to business, the best business processes are the ones that leave room for error. If things are too tight, when one thing goes wrong in one area, the rest of it falls down. It's the same with a budget, okay? Leave room for error. Don't try and be perfect. And then lastly, number 5 is making mistakes does not mean that you are a failure, okay? When a baby starts to walk and it falls over, you don't look at it and laugh at it and you're like, you're pathetic. Why can't you do this, right? Just as you don't shout at kids in school that aren't like picking something up straight away. When they're learning, they need time. Everybody learns differently. Just because you're an adult, it doesn't mean that you won't fail when you try and build a new skill. And budgeting is a new skill. So give yourself the kind of grace that you would give a friend. Yeah? You deserve it, girl. Now that brings us around to the end of the episode. I hope you found that useful, and please do share this with anybody you might think would find it useful, and I will see you all next week.